This week on RSBANDB Update, the 110 Runecrafting Right Click Examine brings news of combination rune changes, imbuing staves for Runecrafting XP, and the Tier 100 staff. We also sit down with the Naabes and discuss Group Ironman plans, ranged inadequacy, and some tips and tricks. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 1013, recorded Thursday, November 21st, 2024, showering with the Naabes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of RSBANDB Update. We're back this week. We're continuing the Group Ironman discussion. Tanis, you're here, as you are each and every week. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Shane.
Also joining us this week, continuing our discussion of Group Ironman and moving beyond the casual RSBANDB group, we have two members of the Naabes here, which, let us know what you think of our episode down the way, folks, about this, showing off different groups. But we have Hyatt Cliff here. You've been listening to the podcast for a long time, and you told me this story about how you started streaming RuneScape a number of years ago, and you had the most captivating content. Would you care to tell the listeners what that was?
That's right. Thank you for having me. Name's Hyatt Cliff. I became known as a streamer for pursuing a goal of picking 100,000 cave nightshade down in the caves. So I would on stream, I'd pick my 7 nightshade, I'd hop worlds, I'd repeat, and that was the modern day equivalent of picking flax I was doing for fun. So to all you many people who enjoyed that content, I thank you.
And of course you are part of the Naabes now, rank 66, but also part of your group is the Knight. And Knight, you told me a fun story about how you became known not only within your clan, but perhaps the wider RS community for base tanking Yakamaru, and what that meant for your time in college.
Yeah, and we are ranked 44, so we're pushing second page here, buddy. But thanks for having me, appreciate it. Yeah, my Yakamaru story, I've kind of played the game on and off over the course of the last few years. But after one of my long extended breaks, I came back, and exactly as the raids at Mazcab came out, and I was one of the kind of few handful of folks who knew how to base tank Yakamaru before we had the luxury of decent defensive abilities and bone shield and such. So I would spend most of my day, without any promise of loot, to be able to help people get their daily kills and stuff like that. But at one point, a trusted friend leaked my phone number onto the RuneScape forums or something related to it, and I ended up, middle of economics class in college, getting some texts from, Noob Slayer 69. Hey, can you come base tank for me, Yaka? So notorious for a little bit there.
Amazing. And sorry about the misrank. I feel like that came from the fact we were just discussing all the wacky names on the top 100 of the competitive Group Ironman. But presently, you guys sit between undiagnosed at rank 43 and OnlyFans at rank 45.
Oh, prestigious place to be.
So, but we're going to get into your Group Ironman ventures in just a wee bit. But before we start talking about content this week, I just want to give a big, huge thank you to our experienced tier Patreon members for whom without update would not be possible. And these guys who are the ones who give everything to update this week. That's Amos Reed, Andrew C., Bladecom, Drama Free, Dominic R., Jason S., Jesse W., Kesky, Lemon Lodge, Mr. T, Ricky A, Rippeth, Runestar, The Naked Captain, and Tim. Big, huge thank you to them. You'll learn more about our Patreon offerings a little bit later in the podcast. But in the meantime, if you want full show notes, those can be found over at update.show. We also have a friends chat in-game, which is found at BitsBytes, and the Discord can be found at update.show/Discord. But we're going to discuss, before we get to the Group Ironman story, we're going to discuss this right-click examine on 110 Runecrafting. So I guess I'll just open this up to the guests here. Any hot takes about 110 Runecrafting and what this means going forward?
So, I mean, I think we're definitely at a bit of a theme here for obviously the last couple of pushes to 110 between smithing and then impending fletching and the bow and now runecrafting the staff. So they're clearly kind of lining us up for, content that's a little bit thematic, that has some kind of like trophy item at the end.
Yeah.
Which, like, I think in concept is cool. I'm a little bit worried about the execution, and I hope they have a little bit grander of a plan than just having these as kind of like one-off, a little bit new bait items. But yeah, I do enjoy the burst of content. I do appreciate kind of the initial slow roll to accelerate skills up a little bit. So, I think there's some additional details that we'll jump into and kind of examine here.
Yeah.
But, I like the intent. I do feel like it's a little bit filler content, but I think skilling is often filler content, and I think with kind of a refined approach to reward system, it does have good potential.
All right, fair enough. How about you, Cliff?
I think, honestly, one of my biggest takeaways is not so specific to the content, but just continued appreciation that Jagex is engaging with the community early and getting feedback. I don't have super strong opinions on the content. I'm a little bit worried about, charging up a staff, disintegrating it for extra XP, that like skills.
The burial mechanic is what you're talking about.
Yeah, correct. I worry a little bit about skills feeling too similar, kind of divination being sky fishing. That's a sort of problem. But I really do appreciate them laying out the plan, talking about the things they're more or less set on, talking about the places they're open to feedback, because I do think the community is very forthcoming with their opinions, and it's nice to see that coming now when there's time to adjust rather than, the weeks after release.
Yeah, because, the biggest point of dialogue we had about 110 smithing was that Masterwork sword didn't really have any passives to it, which I think last I heard they were looking at maybe adding something like that going forward, but I don't know if that will be a featuring of this T100 staff.
My understanding is yes.
Okay.
And if I've read forums and things correctly, the current intent, and I think this comes out with the bow, if I'm not mistaken, is number one, they're going to rework the EZK to improve the quality of its special attack, and then they're going to give the sword a nerfed EZK passive. They're going to give the bow a nerfed
Bow of the Last Guardian.
Bow of Last Guardian passive, yes, thank you. And then they're going to give the staff a nerfed Fractured Staff of Armadale passive. So they're going with the theme of, hey, the legendary weapons are the North Star moving forward, and I guess we're opening up an option for cheaper versions of them, self-made versions of them.
Which I guess is good in our Group Ironman perspective at this point, right?
That's what I was going to say. I'm super curious how our opinions develop as we reach that portion of the game, right? Because how many things did I think were absolutely useless until the past month?
Right.
Just a different world.
Yeah.
Right. Tannis, where do you land on these?
I think that, I think it's good. I think it's actually design that we've talked about actually becoming more prevalent in game. And I think it's simply because it works. We've long talked about having, ever since Overloads came into the game, that was kind of the gold standard of what you wanted, and a kind of a capstone piece of content for skilling, something that, you could put together. And then we saw that again with Masterwork.
Yeah.
And so we've talked. We know that these things, that it works. So I'm glad to see this. And we saw it with Necromancy too, right? Like we talked about how you could actually grind your stuff out. And maybe no, you're not. It's not the absolute best DPS, yada.
But it's going to get you through any content in the game you want to play.
It'll get you there, right? Yeah. So I look at it as like lessons learned, and I could, at the risk of everything feeling similar, like I get that concern. at the end of the day, though, RuneScape's kind of like Taco Bell, right? I mean, there's only so much stuff you can do with it.
Well,
like,
and I mean rune crafting as well, right? I mean, let's break this down. You have soul runes, you have the rune span, you have the runic attuner through the abyss or with the wicked hood, and you have the necrotic rune crafting now. And I mean, diving into their first question here, should you be able to in effect burial these new magic weapons? That adds a new training method, presumably beyond level 99 for rune crafting. And I guess the question to the table here, to the show is, would you be happy if you were forced to go, say, do soul runes or go do necrotic rune crafting from 100 to 110?
Does the staff, does it fit? I think you can make a case to make it fit thematically, if they tried. Now, is it going to feel like it's smithing training? Maybe. I don't know. It might.
But you do it at the altar, and it's not going to have, like the bar input. So it's going to feel, I think, substantially different. And maybe the burial name is just, throwing people for a loop, and it's just using that as the general way of explaining what's happening with that. So.
Well, I mean, I'll do anything other than run altars. Like, piss on that. No. I'd rather set in rune span over running altars.
I feel like I don't know. Maybe I almost want to see some sort of active play. Maybe I hesitate to say that. I do everything AFK, but like if you just like go to the altar and break it down, I feel like that's just going to feel kind of boring and in contrast with the rest of the skill. If you do some sort of creative interaction with the altar, or you need to run around like the area of the altar and do something with the staff, I don't know. These are half-baked ideas, but I feel like I want to see something that engages with the rune crafting area or altars or something, so it feels a little bit more thematic.
You have to play the Runecrafting Guild minigame to be able to break it down.
There you go.
When you travel to the different altars.
Oh boy.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't even have to go all that far, but you could do a lean forward Runecrafting, because I don't think we really have it. Right? I can't think of...
altar running's lean forward.
It is, but that's... I don't even look at it as lean forward as much as I look at it as just pain in the ass. Like, I'm just clicking on a mini-map.
Yeah.
Like,
so,
I don't know.
The way they say it'll work is that you'll get the inert magic weapon, and you bring it with you to the altar, and as you craft runes, some of the runes will be sacrificed to imbue the weapon, earning you additional rune crafting XP each time. Once it is fully imbued, it will become a tier 85 magic weapon. If you continue the imbuing process, you upgrade it to a tier 90 weapon. And they say this method is perfect for players seeking maximum rune crafting XP without needing every rune crafted. And as you level up to 110, the efficiency of imbuing increases, and you'll unlock options to sacrifice more runes for even greater XP. And with this comes the potential feature for players to sacrifice the completed weapon for a final XP boost, with a chance to recover some of the runes invested into it.
Sounds a little like invention disassembly to me.
It kind of does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like basically an offhand, right?
Yeah.
Level up,
but see if they do that, I don't see there being an issue with that, because in theory you only need one of these staves, right? If you wanted to make one to use as a weapon,
and you're using the runes, so it definitely has a unique rune crafting feel to it.
And it might be good for the economy too, the rune economy.
Yeah, I like the item syncing components of that, both for the runes and for the staff itself, for those exact reasons. I just kind of worry about, like, okay, I'm standing here charging it, and now, okay, I'm standing here and it's uncharging. Like, it just, I don't know. There's something to that they got to nail, sort of what does it feel like to actually break it down. You
almost need, dare I say it, a necromancy ritual-like mini-game at the Runecrafting altar.
You know what? I don't know, like, lore-wise how this would work, but even legitimately a ritual where you use this as the focus and you get necromancy and runecrafting experience, like, I'd be cool with that.
Maybe that's the way to do it. Just have it be primary runecrafting XP on that same burial level, and just a token amount of necromancy XP, like the slime and ectoplasm ritual is.
Sure. That would at least feel different. Yeah, I'm looking for something like that where it's not just
But then the question is, runecrafting is linked to magic, right? And I guess the thing is that thematically, are the powers that be okay with having a necromancy tie-in?
Well, you got necrotic runes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's if you charge the staff at necrotic runes, then you can use it as a focus to disassemble it.
I don't know. Interesting, I think.
That could be a whole thing.
Yeah, and I feel like everybody is focusing in here on our discussion that the biggest thing that it just needs to be more than just click on the altar and have it be done. And I think that's probably the thing we take away from this here. And I'll throw that out to the listeners too. Is that the way to go, or is there maybe a better way that we're not thinking of right now?
I think I have like kind of two questions about this update, and I don't mean them as criticism or anything like that, but just general questions I have about like advancements of 110 skills in general. Number one, for like runecrafting, like where's the armor? So we got tank armor for melee. We just had the update that it's going to be given similar life point bonus to necromancy, which I think is really nice and gives it a PVM niche. Why does crafting have 3 combat styles of the 4 that are dependent on crafting now? Because you need crafting for necromancy, you need crafting to make range armor, and you need crafting to make runecrafting armor. Like, I kind of would have liked to see a rework of like, hey, let's just kind of somehow just get rid of the needle of thread even, and just say, all right, like, listen, like, magic armor is under runecrafting now. I think would have been nice.
Yeah, that was one of our first things that we said at the roadmap unveiling, is that maybe this is an opportunity to do that, because we definitely thought of that. And I mean, let's be real here. Well, what do we need crafting for aside from invention unlocks, right?
I think my other thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say we have to have something to go from 110 to 120, right? Maybe.
I guess so. We get to that in 5 years.
It in there. I don't know.
I think my other question is, like, once again, where are we going with these weapons? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just at a higher tier of PVM in which I kind of experience other players, but I haven't seen a ton of people running around with a tier 100 sword. I assume that will change a little bit when it gets a bit of a passive and a little bit more utility. I was trying to look for it desperately before this, but there was... Go ahead.
Somebody in our comments when 110 smithing came out put it the best way. He said, this is the weapon for my dad, because my dad sees everybody saying that he should get the Easy AK sword, but the Easy AK sword costs an arm and a leg, and he doesn't necessarily know how to best synergize it. But this masterwork sword gets him 90% of the way there, and he can still have fun with it. That was the best use case that I saw for these weapons, these tier 100 weapons.
I think that's all right. What I would personally like to see, and I'm no game designer, so I'm sure there's flaws in this, but there was a great idea that I think I saw on the RuneScape Reddit a couple months ago of this idea. Jagex has already put out the idea, hey, we're going with the legendary weapons, the big 3 or 6 or whatever we end up with at tier 95 are the true end goal, and like a lot of future combat updates, rather than being new weapons, are going to focus on how do we synthesize with these weapons, right? And I saw a cool Reddit. I wish I could find his username. I cannot. But this idea that, hey, well, instead of those weapons, what if we like kind of mixed invention in the original intensive invention and these tier 100 weapons, and said, hey, maybe you want a two-handed tier 100 weapon with like a nerfed version of a Seren Godbow and like an Easy K passive in it. So maybe you can item sync and put those two weapons, a component of them in the tier 100, and you have this like sword as a base that is okay as a beat stick on its own, but has, customizable options. And, you do the math on it, you come up with what, like 64, whatever, different like combinations of tier 95 or tier 90 plus, passives that you can have on it to like make it kind of your own legendary weapon. And I feel like that obviously takes a lot of like combat balancing, and I'm probably if anybody on the combat team is listening to me is getting a migraine right now thinking about it. But I think that's the kind of end game stuff that would get players really excited.
You know what I think that's a perfect update for? I don't necessarily know that it fits in like the 110 smithing or the 110 rune crafting, but I think that would be a wonderful expansion to invention.
Yeah, which I think is far overdue. The last real invention update we got was God Wars 2.
Yeah. So I like the idea on that, and as a base, and there's other weapons like that are great bases as well, like the tier 92 spear or tier 90 spear rather, that comes from archaeology as an example, and how that can be upgraded through archaeology and invention to masterwork level. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good blueprint to have on that, and that gets to the other thing that they're looking for in this is what is the purpose of the tier 100 staff, and we kind of went over a bit of that already, in that they could have a weaker passive that the similar to the fractured staff passive on that. Would that, and this is I guess the question that we have now here, being Group Ironman, would you rather craft something like this tier 100 staff, or would you rather sit at hard mode care pack to grind that out as your Group Ironman characters? That's an interesting one, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I feel like the real answer is you get 80 necromancy and then you go to normal mode gate, and you go and earn yourself to 95 wand and orb that cost 100 mil each or whatever the hell they are now. That's the real mel answer. But
yeah, like, that's fair.
Yeah, like I don't want to sit at hard mode Carapac on a Iron Man. That does not feel worth it as a grind right now, and that's probably partly due to the fact that the fracture staff probably needs a little buff. But
yeah, that's fair.
I mean, at some point, if we are going for levels, which I'm not sure that's necessarily our goal, but if we're going for 110 rune crafting anyway, sure, we'll make it, we'll use it, it'll be cool. And maybe we're doing Carapac hard mode because group content is fun on Group Ironman. So I don't know. I think it's okay to have multiple options. I don't know that one jumps out at me as. But I mean, honestly, if I'm min-maxing, I'm going for the tier 95 stuff.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, so we've kind of already gone through the weapon. What do you guys think of this generic elemental rune that you can basically have the combination rune of all combination runes? Can be used for any combination of elements that you need.
I like it. I would say people will already use something like an elemental staff to kind of creatively do this for when they're, using lunar spells to skill or something like that. So I don't know, it seems like having more rune options adds some variety, potentially add some new altars or training methods if you have to go to each altar. So more content to do, it sounds good to me. This doesn't sound overpowered or anything like that to me at this point. Maybe somebody will point something out, but so more options, good for me.
I like the space save in your rune pouch, which you still can't with 3 rune pouches cast every spell. Thing. So I mean that's just kind of a nice quality of life. Like I'm candidly just gonna buy a whole bunch of them if I can, because that's the point in the game where I'm at. But I think the community has probably grasped onto what this means for them, or would mean conceptually, and I think it's in line with the rest of the update, like a potential out to having to use specific combination runes to cast high-level spells or new spells, which I think is what they've received the most critique on. And
see, that's my favorite part of this 110 right click examine so far, is that they're planning on removing the fail chance to make combination runes, which will unlock as you level up your rune crafting, and also changing the binding necklace to double any combination runes that you make. And I remember when combination runes came out, they were interesting, and I think the mud runes through the ground, mud runes for the magic potion probably had the most use along the way. But I mean, I just use regular runes rather than going combination, unless it's only for a few at a time, usually on this. So it's an interesting thing, but I think it just all moves into that elemental rune, the ultimate combination rune. So
yeah, those two things seem at odds. That like part of this is, hey, we want to increase the use case for combination rune and make it a viable money making method. But also at the same time, bringing the elemental rune means I feel like people are just going to do the elemental runes, and combination runes will be dead content.
Yeah, so. Well, they say with this, they would consider having high-level spells like the level 5 enchant use the respective combination runes, which obviously you could use whatever, the ultimate elemental rune, as we're calling it now, but those enchant spells would be spells that would use those combination runes. So, I mean, that's a bit of a departure from normal, relying on combination runes for that. So, I don't know, maybe the community will be out on that one. I could see maybe that not going forward, but overall, I think the feedback on these 110 right-click examines has been overall positive.
Yeah, I mean, I like the increased communication for sure, and like Clef said earlier, I think that's where Jagex has really turned a corner in the past maybe 2 years, like probably starting with the introduction of Mod Doom. Is just like they clearly have reformed their outreach model to be proactive in feedback collection, and response before.
Yeah, it took a while for them to get there, but I feel like they're in a decent spot for that right now. But the other big question outside of the 110 burial items, anybody have any ideas for new skilling spells? And that's what they're wondering with this. What do we want for skilling spells? Because keep in mind, last time we got the telekinetic grind and telekinetic sift sand.
I feel like me some telekinetic sift sand. That's a good one.
God, you just love the most tedious task forever, Cliff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a good money maker.
I love money.
So we were talking about this in our Group Ironman chat the other day, of like, especially with the new perspective of Group Ironman, like, who does some of the random bullshit that like keeps main going? Like, who is creating my juju mining potions that I use for all the way to 200 mil? Like, who does that? Like, who has the time? Somebody's making money off of it, clearly, or someone just has like an obsessive hobby like Cliff and his nightshades. But like, are there really enough like rogues out there like doing these odd little random potions that I use in my daily runs every day and just don't even think about? And is new content creating more weird niche tasks, like creating combination runes that like people either do to recomp or try for a couple minutes and then forget about, and then there just becomes this, because
that's what it is for the bulk of people, right? You just do it once and it's gone.
Well, my suggestion is that people put their phone numbers out there so they can text you in class and hey, I'm out of juju mining potions, get on it.
And I didn't come into the show having an idea for new skilling spells. Tanis, do you have any ideas for what you would like to see a skilling spell solve?
Maybe, well, I don't know. I'm afraid that it probably already exists, and I just have forgotten about it. But how about pulling cooked fish when you're fishing?
Kind of like the relic power, like the relic power does.
Yeah.
Oh, those are relic
there's
power.
a relic power that does that.
Like I said, I have a feeling this probably exists, but well, shit.
I mean, if we leaned into agility, we could copy something from old school, and we could have something that converts prayer to run energy.
Hang on, Tanis. This is genius. I'm going with your idea. You ready? You cast a spell, and for the next 5 minutes, when you cooked food, it becomes uncooked. It becomes raw as a money-making method.
That's not horrible, actually.
Okay.
And it has to tell
food. There we go.
And then with that, you could create a cycle because you could, in effect, fish with that archaeology relic, and then you could do that uncooking thing, and then you could recook. I don't know if they want that kind of circular thing in cooking and fishing, but it's definitely interesting from the Iron Man perspective, since that seems to be the mode we're on.
We can call it sous vide. You're just sitting there, like, cooking and uncooking the same fish all day.
Yeah,
we'll
that's
call
interesting.
It'd be like jerk fish or not jerk, but right? Jerky.
Just make it fish jerky. I feel like spells, like utility spells, have been like the purpose is to make an annoying or tedious task quicker.
Yeah.
Or just kind of functionally remove it from game or give people an option. So I'm just trying to think of anything that like really fits that at this point. I feel like we have so many quality of life. There's probably a couple things in herb lore we mostly have like clean all herbs at this point, or maybe I'll make unfinished faster would be nice. I know you can pay, I think, an NPC for that, or maybe that's old school, but like maybe that's
so just
an
something
option
to speed up herb lore a little bit then.
Yeah, just like a process enhancement kind of.
Give me
how about like a feather pillow, where we stuff a pillow full of our Silverhawk feathers and get big drops of agility XP.
Oh God, if only.
I want to see a magic box trap spell where you cast a spell and it creates a box trap in an empty space around you from runes.
We should be able to do that.
That's actually not a bad idea.
That's a good idea.
Would like that. Or like even just to reset all.
Yeah.
That's actually a good idea.
Box traps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and Hunter sucks, so anything to improve it.
And that's kind of where I was going. Was I was thinking, what could we do for Hunter? Maybe some sort of spell that just makes your box traps or what have you be a guaranteed catch that would need to recast it, but just have the magic box trap instead.
We were on this last night because Cliff is trying to grind for our farm Chinchampa, which is critical, we've learned, for early game range and obviously advancing farming. But I was doing some, deep RuneScape Wikipedia lore, and you can bait box traps with the readily available and easily stackable item of spiced chopped tomatoes and spiced chopped meat, which is 100% annoying to obtain and not stackable.
Yeah.
And also was not only just implemented in 2007 or 6 or whenever Hunter came out, but when they released the new Chinchampas for skilling, they're like, oh, this is a great idea. Everybody uses spiced tomatoes to bait their Chinchampa traps. Let's just duplicate that over for these 3 new Chinchampas.
Yeah. I did that last week
on
my Group Ironman character, and it took me about 1,600 Chinchampas to get the male and the female.
Oh no!
Bless you.
So, strap in for a bit. You're going to be there for a while.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I'm thinking. Even like anything to make that better. I think there's 2 things that annoy me. One is that it's not, frankly, 100% catch rate, because you already have to wait for something to be interested. Like when it fails, that's frustrating. And then having to walk to empty tiles and run around. Like if you could just cast that from standing still and it used an empty tile around you.
Yeah.
Like how protein traps work.
Well, that's why when Het's Oasis came out, why the crocodiles were such a big deal is because they were a less run-intensive way of training Hunter and decent at XP. So...
I've got to give you my absolute best tip. I had this written down to talk about later. But I learned during Group Ironman that if you open the cosmetics menu, so like where you get put in the dressing room box or whatever, and you just leave that open, you can do whirligigs, and your character will never move. So you can just absolutely spam click, rapid click, and if you click and miss a whirligig, you don't run around all over the place. And that sounds like just this nice, like, oh, that's less annoying, but it actually just makes a massive difference in how relaxing the whole thing is. And I didn't realize it until I had this beautiful feature. I'm going to call it a feature.
Yeah, I wonder how Jagex feels about that interaction, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, I don't know. I don't know why it's not coded that way in the first place, but it seems just like a quality of life thing.
All right. Well, there's our spells. Something around Hunter probably sounds good, or maybe the dreaded cook uncook cycle.
No, that's the other way. It's bind self. You could just like ice blitz yourself to not move during whirly gigs without having the interface up.
What about the expansive pouch? Kind of taking some inspiration from old school's colossal pouch. With this, it's going to have that masterwork level collection of steps and runecrafting level beyond 99 required to take from it. It will be able to store at least 44 essence with the final size to be determined. And it won't work along other side pouches, but will require one of each existing pouch as part of the creation process. What kind of materials do we see going into there? Abyssal thread, perhaps?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to say unsold something just because don't want to make us do it. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe after the Moonstone business with the pickaxe last time.
Yeah. Something to tie in for rune span, so you gotta like siphon rune spheres and revive that kind of quiet content.
There's also the idea behind it that rather than just, one of each pouch, maybe this is an excuse to, in effect, just have multiples of the small to massive pouches included in that. Maybe. I don't know. That might be something. And I feel like the pickaxe was kind of a no-brainer for that, because we know, in effect, how to make masterwork items with a pickaxe and then put that into a masterwork sword. We knew how to make masterwork armor. We don't really have a blueprint for this yet, so what they choose here is going to be very, very important. And maybe it comes down to imbuing some of the magical thread that you get from the Abyss in a series of altars a certain number of times for Runecrafting XP, just like how you fold the glorious bars.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is you're gonna want to do something that incorporates the runecrafting content that is out there and sort of celebrates the various elements that make runecrafting. So I feel like it's got to be some sort of going from altar to altar to charge it up or to imbue something or something to that effect. I do like the idea, Knight, of like maybe you need to fill it with runes from the rune span, the ones you temporarily have. Like maybe you need 100 of each rune in it or something like that. Just, what gets people engaging with runecrafting content as part of creation, I think is going to be a piece of it.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it comes down to, is just in effect, and I don't necessarily want to put this out there and, say this to say that runecrafting is a great skill, but, just celebrate what runecrafting is as a skill, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like Great Orb Project is what I think of when I think runecrafting, and I think we should just have to gain 400 points in Great Orb Project.
Oh.
You're trolling us here, right?
we actually... Great Orb Project is kind of a meta for early Ironman to be able to get all the talismans.
Yeah, so Shane, that's what it feels like when you talk about Elemental Workshop 5. Right there.
I just want to hear the community reaction if they're like, we've thought about the creation process, and you can purchase it from a reward shop with 1,000 Great Orb Project points. Like,
there's your mini game fix. It's back to life. Have fun, suckers. Oh, also you need this for comp, so
make mini games great again.
Well, I mean, they have an example for a perfectly good runecrafting mini game on old school side when it comes to Guardians of the Rift.
Yeah, so, I have not played it, but I've heard wonderful things.
Yeah, you can do it for a bit, but once you hit 65-ish, it starts to feel kind of slow, because runecrafting is still slow over there. But the last thing I want to touch on is that they say in relation to this update is that this update is focused on levels 100 to 110. So they won't be retrofitting this weapon crafting mechanic to lower levels upon launch.
Seems fine. That can always be revisited.
Yeah.
Kind of aligns with fletching and smithing. Like it's...
Yeah.
How have you guys... have you guys, any of you guys doing magic for your group Ironman? How has that been going early weapon wise?
Yeah, I've actually done probably the most magic. I think magic's maybe the most friendly early style for an Ironman. Arguably necromancy, but I'd say magic because there's just a clear path of progression. Getting to level 60 magic is not too terribly difficult. You can do it at Shattered Worlds where you're given gear and food, or you can, sort of get to 50 magic, buy a mystic wand, things like that from a store. And then at 60 you get the Gothic Staff, which is just a fantastic weapon that has uses throughout the game. You get your God Cape, which is an insanely powerful cape for that level. And those things will carry you through nicely, along with like lunar armor eventually if you want it, until you hit level 75 and you can use that Vanquish as a guaranteed tier 75 staff if you've done questing of any kind. So like that progression actually feels really smooth on an early Ironman. It felt like you always kind of had a clear progression path with a good power curve. Compared to some of the other combat styles, I think Knight's going to talk about ranged a little bit. Feels pretty gross early on. So yeah, highly recommend Magic if people are still sort of getting their footing on how do I want to dip my toe into combat on Ironman.
Nice, and that is what I wanted to ask about in relation to 110 Runecrafting. That's good to hear that it's not too bad. I've been mostly focusing on necromancy myself for that, but we'll get into the group Ironman discussion in just a bit. We have a Reddit thread to go through first, but in the meantime, I just want to thank some Patreon supporters this week. I'd like to thank Alvaro L, Amos Reed, Andrew C, Arvids L, Bladecom, Brayton K, Chilbura, Dominic R, Drama Free, Duramax, Gila Fleur, Hair A, Iskatu, Jade Gizmo, Jason S, Jesse W, Kesky, Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Mongrath, Mr. T, Pernasius, Ricky A, Rippeth, Robbie D, Runestar, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Shirt Pants, Tabby, Targayin, The Naked Captain, The Dabbing Goat, Tim, Ukulele Steve, Woody, Zant, and Zazakon. Big, huge thank you to all these people. You make RSBANDB Update go, and if you want to learn more about the Patreon offerings, head on over to patreon.com/RSBANDB. The support means the world to us, and there you can sign up for as little as $1 a month, and if you do that, you'll gain access to an entire back catalog of monthly bits or bonus shows, as we call them. We presently have a poll running right now for our December and January monthly bits, because we like to take a bit of a break around Christmas time, so we're gonna get 2 recorded in December, so those can go out in early December and early January respectively. But Patreon members are voting on that through the weekend. Some topics there including Evolving Combat, Who Did It Better, RuneScape's Gods Through the 6 Ages, temporary game modes, and what makes PVM fun. So if you want to vote in that poll, or if you just want to listen when those episodes arrive, you can sign up at patreon.com/RSBNB for as little as $1 a month. We also have a VIP tier where you get, for $3 a month, a special VIP rank on Discord, mention on the podcast at the start of the month, and access to a chat channel, as well as a high-quality stereo version of the show as well. And we also do have the Insider tier, where for $5 a month, you'll get a shout-out on the podcast each and every week, and access to the clips that we use to make the clip show, and pending the reopening of the postal system in my country, you will be getting the RSBNB Update Christmas card this December. Fingers crossed on that. Our postal service is on strike presently, so we're just waiting to see what happens as we get into December before we commit to the card this year. But patreon.com/RSBNB. Thanks so much, everyone. It means the world to us.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So, what do we think's with this general art and style survey that they posted here on Reddit here today? Because Cliff, you sent this to me, and I was like, this is odd. They're just asking for feedback about, I guess, which one feels the most RuneScape-y, but is there something more to this? What do we think?
Yeah, it was so kind of interesting. So this is just a Reddit post, and it's got 66 individual concept arts concept art pieces for different outfits. And the post essentially says, hey, we want to know what you think of these, let us know. And I think sort of just the first thing that struck me is like, that is kind of an interesting way to go about collecting feedback. Just like throw it up on Reddit, see what bounces off the comment sections. It wasn't part of a survey or anything. And I'm kind of interested in seeing how useful the feedback is. I don't know that Reddit is perfectly representative of the entire community. But at the same time, some of the most like passionate, positive or negative feedback about outfits probably is useful for them, and probably does at least somewhat resonate with the community.
Yeah,
so
and
go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's worth saying that none of these are guaranteed to go into game as they are. The one that immediately stood out to me was furry number 54.
The people's
Of course
favorite.
it did.
I actually owned chinchillas, so this is a furry chinchomp outfit, and I would never wear it because it's a furry. But I do think the play on chinchomp is kind of fun.
Yeah,
I think RuneScape art like costume style or art style has sort of this interesting place where people love options and collecting things, and like some of these, I bet every one of these speaks to someone. But you've also got a camp of players who are like, it's hard to feel immersed or medieval anymore when you've got folks running around in fairy wings and things like that. Like, it's just a little bit different.
There's a beekeeper costume at number 14.
Beekeeper. There it is.
Beekeeper, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of these are cool. I'd be happy to see many of these in game. I don't care about cosmetics enough that I would probably drop money on maybe any of these.
There's Tom Cruise's outfit at 27.
Yeah, I didn't even catch that.
Oh, yeah.
In general, I feel, I don't know, there's a lot that break the mold, and there's some that, fit in nicely. Like, I feel that number 63 fits in nicely to what RS would be, as does number 21 and number 1 fit into kind of some of the styles we already have here.
Yeah, 55 I could see too. Right? There's a number of these that you wouldn't be surprised to see in game.
Yeah, and it's just to, I guess, kind of get the feedback of what people would be acceptable with in game. But the number 1 top comment, and I'd be interested to get everybody's thoughts on this, is that number 1 top comment by Fruit Onyx: we should be having a discussion about the Avatar rework first, then agree on a direction of travel for the styling.
I was gonna say Avatar rework confirmed. Yeah.
That's always a tough one for me to comment on, because I was so freaking excited. I was a big Mod Iroh fan.
Yeah.
I was watching every one of those streams, but I also, I don't know, I work for a software development company, and I understand.
So
at some point,
how difficult that would have been.
Yeah, and I don't know the ins and outs of their development process and their technology stack, but I recognize there is a point where you might get really excited by concepts, and when you're digging into the engineering behind it, it may not be worth a couple 1,000-hour project if you can put out some great content.
The most bonkers thing I heard with the Avatar rework is that they had pieces of facial hair that were effectively bound to the chins of models. That's how absurd some of the character setups were are in RS right now.
Yeah. So I guess my take on that is I would love to see it. I think Jagex is painfully aware of the desire to see it, and if they are not prioritizing it, it's probably for good reason. And that's why I don't push on it too hard.
I feel like that's a smart thing to say, but when it comes down to it, if you pulled an Avatar rework, if in say the 2025 survey, and everybody goes in that direction, is that something then I wonder that they kind of have to commit to, better for worse, kind of like old school had to commit to sailing for better or worse?
It's such a... Sorry, go ahead, Dennis.
I was just going to say, you guys got to get rid of that whole pesky democracy thing.
Yeah.
True. That solves everything. Just an iron fist.
I mean, that is kind of what I was going to say, though, is like that's the tough thing is that players are not developers. And, you know, the idea might sound amazing and it might have a ton of value. But then if you look at, okay, we could do this or Shadow God Wars dungeon, like the reality is players actually would have preferred the other, even if that's hard to evaluate when you see two things on a survey. So I don't know. It's a tough challenge. I'm glad I'm not making the decision. I don't envy Jagex, but I do trust that they understand the desire.
Yeah, and it always comes back to something that Mod Jack said in one of his live streams that he did when he was doing those, and he just put it so bluntly. And you know, I really admire him and credit him for doing that. In effect, telling the players what they need to hear rather than what they want to hear sometimes. And what he's basically said in the past is that players don't know what they want. They think they want something, but they don't actually want that.
So I'll kind of take a cue from Cliff here and speak to like some of my work experience. I work in like very high level communication and change management on some pretty complicated federal systems, candidly. And one thing that you learn really early on, and that we teach to our clients is if the truth is really complicated and it's not going to build consensus or make everyone happy, then you kind of never tell the full truth. Like it is disadvantageous for like a governing body to play its full hand. So I've seen a lot of discord on Reddit in regards to, hey, I understand from like what Jagex has put out that the avatar refresh is challenging, but I wish Jagex would just come out and say, hey, we could do the avatar refresh, but you guys don't get any other updates for a full year or something like that. And that's like a desire. But like as a company, you don't want to do that.
No.
Because like the community is not going to be happy anyway. They're not going to be happy to hear that's the level that's required. The people who do want it and would be willing to sacrifice an entire year of updates, which is obviously completely against the interest of the game, because that would be ridiculous. You know, are not going to be happy. Like you cannot play your full card. So like there's always a desire from the player base for like more transparency. But I feel like Jagex has handled this like fairly okay. Of they're doing what they can. They've done these small like ninja fixes or pet projects to improve the general look and feel of the game. But we have gotten glimpses into like what you said, like these weird nuances of, you know, 20 plus years of graphics that range from all you have to do, especially once again speaking the Ironman experience, is start the Colomancer's like first challenge in the quest for a recipe for disaster, and all the 20 character models in the room look so freaking ridiculous, between like some that were last updated in 2001 and some that were updated last year. And it's such a clash, and I just can't imagine with how much armor and cosmetics and how the entire like hundreds of developers that have had their hands in them and built them on the models in different ways, like how impossible it is to assess the complexity of a project like this.
Yeah, and I forget what armor set it was, but I think it was the most recent paid armor set that they put out through Solomon's General Store. If you wear that with, you know, any, you know, cape that people like wearing, whether it be, you know, a cape of accomplishment or a fire cape or what have you, it's just going to clip right through that armor set. And, you know, you question somebody who just started playing the game, are they going to be, in effect, happy with this, that this armor set that they paid real money for is clipping through other items in the game? And the sad reality of it is that's just RuneScape in 2024, unless something drastic changes about it.
Yeah, and the alternative is you don't get that cape, right? Because the cape is going to take an entire month to develop and retrofit for every armor piece, and
then you're going to upset half the population about it, like when they first changed the skill capes.
Yep.
So
you need RuneScape 4.
And that's where I go next with that, is that if you're going to do something as big as an avatar rework that's going to take a year plus to do, and it would mean no updates, if the money is in place, you're better off at that point almost just starting up a, you know, like you said, Tannis RuneScape 4, which we know probably won't happen at this point, I think. So,
well, we've got the survival game, and we have friends we know that have alluded to having gotten an invite So who knows?
That's
Maybe that's a pilot model for what it could be. I don't think we're close to it, but
yeah, I don't know. All I know about it is that it is based loosely off of Valheim and in the Unreal Engine and in the RuneScape world, of course.
Yep.
And
people are NDA'd, so they're not going to speak.
And skills.
Yeah, but at this point in time, again, survival game 2024. Survival games were 2017.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
not to be
late.
Rude to Chagix or anything. It's just.
But the same thing happened with the card game. Chronicle wasn't a bad game, but it came out at the end of the card game craze, or past it, actually.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is Pal World and Gillinor.
No,
yeah,
that would be interesting. And that would only be a year and a bit off. Any other final thoughts on any of the numbers here, whether it be Furry 54 or Tom Cruise 27 here?
This is dropped in such an unconventional way. This feels like something that just some random mod would put on Twitter. I wonder if there's a secret intention in it, not necessarily built into it, but I wonder if this is something other than just conveying a request for general aesthetic
in
feedback.
terms of just figuring out where the player's at, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
They're going to get a reaction. That's the place to get a reaction from, right?
Yeah, it feels like some kind of silent teaser to secretly build hype. I don't know. That doesn't quite make sense, but it just feels so weird, and I assume the chance of this is not super high, and it's probably just some mod being wacky. But I just wonder. It's a lot of art. It all seems pretty cohesive to RuneScape. I wonder if this is teasing something.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And I guess the other two that stand out to me as interesting are 22 and 43 are both non-human in that one's a robot and one is a skeleton, and that looks like it's not like an actual human body. Like that, I don't know that I've seen the technology to actually replace the character model underneath the outfit with something like that. So it'd be interesting to see. Oh, I guess, sorry, I have the ethereal outfits, I suppose, do that.
A little bit.
And at the core of it, everything is just a skeleton, and it can be transparent or not, just like you have the ghostly robes, right? So
yeah, fair enough.
All right, so tell me about the Naabes. How did this group come to be?
Well, I think the first place I'd start is I have been looking forward to Group Ironman for years. And I think this is so good for the game. And I think temporary game modes in general are great for the game. Fresh Start Worlds and hopefully in the future leagues. Because we're all playing a 20-some-year-old game where the people love the complexity and the puzzle of what's the next thing I want to do and what's all the different methods I can get there and how do I make it more efficient, less efficient, different boosts and unlocks. We all love that. But that's also a solved puzzle at this point where people have been playing that same game for decades. And to me, when you introduce a temporary game mode, you're basically taking the game that we love and saying, what if you change the rules? What if it was a new puzzle to solve? What if there wasn't an established answer and you got to experiment and see what works? And I just think that is so healthy for people who have maxed accounts for years to actually get back into that delicious early game and mid game and just solve new problems without just reading the wiki and saying, oh, this is where I should go train at this level. So super pumped about the game mode.
All right. What was your main reason for jumping on Knight?
I think it was really a desire to experience the game in a different way. So my main, which is just the Knight, is I hit 5.8 about 2 months ago now. I never thought I'd push for comp, and then I never thought I'd push for trim, and then I never thought I'd push for true max, and just kind of stumbled into it as you do in RuneScape sometimes. But so I've never played any other account apart from my old school account, which I originally came back to the game after about a 6-7 year hiatus, which is just named OSRS Night. And I got to about 80% max and just realized that I wanted to get back to the main game for really combat and AFK ability reasons. And so, joined the game. I've always been very community centric. And I clanned up and in the process, kind of accidentally ran into Cliff again. And Cliff and I, actually go back to being in a clan together in about the 2006 to 2008 to 9 range.
Holy cow! Did you guys PvP back then?
No, I was afraid to go to God Wars Dungeon 1 at the time. I was like level 60, 70 noob. People were showing me how to go kill bandos with a group of 5. Okay.
But I think so the clan obviously disbanded, nearly 2 decades ago back. No, that's not right. Decade and a half, I guess it would be. The Legacy was the name. So shout out to maybe any stragglers who are still out there apart from us. But a lot of us were really close. We were based in kind of an old forum system. A lot of us, connected either real life or follow each other on Facebook or Instagram and stuff like that. But I lost touch with Cliff for 15 years, and then I can't even remember now, Cliff. I think I either saw you in like a RuneScape news post highlighting you, or on Twitch or something like that.
I did a podcast on somebody's YouTube channel.
Yes,
and you watched the podcast.
Yes.
You're like, wait, I know this guy.
That was it. I'm like, hey, you haven't changed your username. So we reconnected. I was leading a clan, or am leading a clan, and he was leading a separate clan. And so we decided to kind of be joint sister clans. And then as Group Ironman was announced, we're like, hey, we're all in very similar stages of kind of rounding out our accounts, all of us hitting 5.8 bill. I think we'll all be done either this month or next month. And it just felt like a cool community of folks with similar goals, similar time commitments, and also like a willingness to let life get in the way and not take this too seriously. And so it's become like a fun new way for each of us to experience the game in a new way that's a true, even though it's not a fresh start world, it's a fresh start for all of us. So that's been our experience.
So was
far.
the goal initially to compete, because you are rank 44 right now? What was the idea initially among the group in terms of how seriously you were going to take this?
Yeah, and I think that question is probably the most important question for anybody who's thinking about starting a Group Ironman. Having a similar mindset and approach. What is our goal? How seriously are we taking this? If you're not on the same page with your group members, there's going to be some resentment somewhere. And so that was the number one thing I was looking for with group members. And our mindset was like, I'll speak for myself at least. I have a busy life. I have a pretty demanding full-time job. I've got 2 young kids. I can't just play RuneScape all day. I try to AFK on mobile where I can, but I really can't at work very much. And so to me, it was kind of like I wanted to take this seriously when I was playing and get excited about taking it seriously and try to theory craft. Like the theory crafting was the big part for me. But I also needed people who were going to play for a long time. I expect this to sort of be my new main account for the long run. And I wanted people that were going to stick with it and treat this as like a marathon, and sort of take it seriously and treat it like a marathon. But that doesn't necessarily mean playing 12 hours a day. That might be playing 2 hours a day for the next 10 years.
And you've done very well with that so far. I mean, rank 44 in terms of somebody who's not, playing 12 hours a day with that. So
yeah, so the tricky thing here is, first of all, there is some coincidence of timing that I actually got sick right around release.
Okay.
So I was home for like 4 days, unexpectedly, and could not work, but I could like lounge around and play on mobile and stuff. And I think, frankly, I thought I was going to be the weak link in the group as far as playtime. And so with me playing a lot and the rest like kind of playing how they expected, I think all of a sudden we were looking around at the end of the first week and going, holy crap, we're like rank 100. It just was not expected at all. And then I think like since then it's been this, well, shoot, we're in the top 100. I guess I'm going to keep playing as much as I can for now. It's going to last forever. I'm sure we're going to drop soon, but like we just creep it up, 2 to 5 ranks every day ever since. And all of a sudden I'm like, man, I got to sleep more sometime soon. But we just kept grinding. I don't know. We've just stuck with it. So, Knight, what's your perspective?
The other component to think about is once again, like we're all very experienced with the game, or at least have played for a long time. Like we're a 5-man team. We're all, once again, like near or at uber maxed. So you look at the math and like we collectively have a minimum of 50 years of RuneScape experience between us, which is, yeah. So for better or for worse, like we also just do know the game, even though it's been amazing to rediscover the early game that I honestly just never played because I maxed like pre-Prividenus. So right. I don't know a lot of this, like, how the early tiers work and everything like that. But like we know the basics of the game. We know what works. Like we're able to navigate combat or strategic skilling. And to Cliff's point, like we'd also done a little bit of pre-planning. We had some spreadsheets going and some not crazy guides, but we knew what some preliminary goals were and how we wanted to kind of sync up to help each other while still having a fun time with the game. And that combined with, once again, 50 years of RuneScape experience between us is probably enough to float us just above some groups that fall off by nature of having members that aren't quite as active, aren't quite as experienced, or get distracted by drama or kicking people or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. What would you say in general is the plan or the goal about where you and your group want to go with this?
So I think super long term, it's to keep having fun and setting new goals. So like we actually don't have a very clear vision of like, we're not racing to get Reaper Crew or anything like that. We did have sort of an early first milestone goal, which was we wanted to get somebody to Invention as quickly as possible. And we sort of strategized on that. So that's probably also a pretty big factor in our rank is we had somebody with Invention unlocked by the end of week 2. I want to say it was like a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very smart thing to do.
Yeah. And our thought was that we've later learned some challenges with this, but our thought was like, if we can just superpower one person there, like, imagine a world where as we are training through the mid-game, like, we're supplying ourselves with Grace of the Elves. Like, how big would that be for an Ironman to have that type of supplies just, like, coming in passively? It turns out the real challenge here is keeping up the supply of, like, weapons and things to disassemble. So it's not in quite the race we thought. I think they're in, like, the mid-40s right now, and Grace of the Elves is definitely post 100, but... That was really interesting to, if you're feeding somebody all the smithing materials, we had 2 of us just like mining gems for days.
Divine energy too, I'd imagine.
We didn't use too much of that actually.
Okay.
But yeah, we each had our role, and then Thieves, the master strategist of our group, who I know a big fan of the show and community member. He did what he knows best, which was just like absolutely attack thieving and just give us this consistent flow of gold to just sort of take that out of the equation. So it was actually a very good early game strat. I feel good about how we opened. And since then, it's just been sort of maintaining pretty consistent play.
Right on. What about, I know I asked to just, lay down some key points here. I assume something was happening with the Flash Powder Factory too.
Oh yeah. So Thieves had this brilliant goal of, when you think about, I think one of the challenges of Group Ironman for me is like, we need to come up with ways where we can take advantage of the fact that we're a group and we can feed each other supplies. Mm-hmm. It's not really playing Group Ironman strategically if you just have 5 people playing Ironman and efficiently playing single player.
Right.
It's helpful sometimes, right? You can trade. You can it's still fun. I don't want to. Number one thing is to have fun. So if you're doing that, do your thing. But we thought about artisan skills like herb lore, where if you can really feed all of your herbs and skyrocket one person, that is so advantageous to the group to just start getting all of those potions early or make overloads more efficiently with the batch recipes or whatever the case may be. So Thieves had a brilliant idea of Flash Powder was on Spotlight maybe the second week of Group Ironman. So he raced 75 agility or 70 agility? It's
something like that. Something high like that.
Yeah.
I heard the stories about that. I heard the stories about that, how it was affecting him and whatnot. And I'll just put from my perspective, that is not one of my favorite mini games or activities in the game.
No.
Yeah. So credit to Thieves for being the trooper in the group who took that on. But he was racing for that, the Ardoin Diaries to get thieving boost so he can do more AFK. And I think that was a lot of the focus early too, was how do we unlock different things that make our AFK time more valuable. So those things have served us pretty well. And Thieves is already racing up the herblore levels and pretty soon. So I guess part of the logic there too with his thieving was upper 90s is where you can start doing master farmers. With 100% success rate. So just with the herblore being one of the more challenging skills to train in Iron Man, we're getting him to the thieving level for just a supply of all of us doing herb farming to start powering one person up.
Do you have any other group-wide specializations aside from Thieves, thieving, and the person who you pushed to invention? Which that wasn't either of you, was it? That you got pushed to invention?
No, it was our friend Mander.
Okay.
I was
soft Naabe. I think we have moved into specializations. I think a couple of us have multiple specializations, but I think I always knew I was going to be the combat guy, so I did take necromancy early. I just hit 92 a minute ago. I've gotten to AFK God Wars 1, so right now nice. I think I'm dependent for, get us all tier 80s, and also start feeding our invention guy things to eat, which unfortunately has resulted in multiple subjugation wards that he does not want, which is fair, the worst possible drop. But I feel pretty good in that role. It's the way that I enjoy the game. One of my favorite things to do is kind of take the PVME model and find a jank way to AFK something so that I can feel productive in day-to-day life, but also be efficient in the game and provide value to the group. So that's been a lot of fun to specialize in, and kind of once again, as someone who functionally in EOC has never experienced entry-level combat, it's been a cool new experience for me that I haven't had in this. How
are you finding accuracy or the damage scaling now that we have that in all the styles?
So much better. The fact that you can just strategize and debuffs actually matter. I'm going to actually think about using Gothic Staff, or hey Cliff, I'm trying to kill the dumb Hellhound in ED4. Let's cast weakness on it, and that speeds us up by 10%. Or I can see exactly how effective my prayers are in increasing at least my accuracy, which correlates to damage on this monster. It feels so much more intuitive than just random buffs and debuffs popping up on my bar and just hoping I hit harder or hit less zeros.
I totally agree. I think it was a wonderful change to combat. And what I really like is seeing the specific weakness, not just the combat style,
right.
But if I use earth spells here, it's a full 10 or 15% increase in accuracy, and that directly translates to damage. So it feels very good.
And I think one of the great things about that too is that you can take necromancy almost anywhere in the game, but still, even at the low level, if you lean into those weaknesses like the earth spells you were mentioning, you benefit greatly from that.
you do. And I think the other thing in a group Ironman, going back to like, how does the group dynamic change things? If people tend to specialize in a combat style, that makes your PVM journey as far as getting drops feel a lot smoother. You don't need to get 5 full sets of subjugation rogues. You can try to unlock one set for your mage, and you move on to the next boss. So it feels kind of nice to specialize in combat, not a requirement. I think everyone's going to dabble in necromancy, to be fair, because the sustain in necromancy makes it very attractive for AFK. But yeah, we've definitely kind of gone our own combat routes.
Right on. If you, and you know, this is typically the what have we been doing section of the show, but I guess the question is, if we were to look at your last week, 2 weeks, even since the beginning, let's start with you, Cliff. What would you say one of the biggest stories that you could walk away from this Group Ironman experience with and share with the listeners is?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest story for me is just what it has felt like to do group bossing. I am not big into combat. I am happy to do Slayer, and I will do my bossing and complete a drop log because I'm a completionist, but like I don't crave to go do bossing every day. And for the first time ever, like when I log in, the thing I'm excited about is like, I hope I roll Dagannoth Kings, because then for a Reaper task, because then I can get my squad together and we can each bring a different combat style, and we'll just go like rock this as a group, because solo I can't take all 3, and safe spotting is boring. Like those moments are just so Group Ironman to me, and I'm probably having the most fun I've ever had in RuneScape.
Yeah, and I also think that just adds something to it, because so much of what we see in RS is people playing it as a single player game, but you forget the MM in the part of MMORPG a lot of the time. So that's great to hear. How about you, Knight?
Yeah, 2 for me, and I'll keep the first one pretty quick, but because I think it builds off the Cliff's last point and your last point is the MMO feel is a little bit more back for me. I'm used to being in boss instances. I'm used to being stuck on the Ark for hours on my main, and I mean, it's no illusion. I don't know how many like new people Group Ironman has brought to the game. I hope a decent amount or brought some people back. But a lot of those in the game, I think have joined are like us and coming from settled accounts that they've played for a while. But it's still cool to see like level 50s running around again and having a bunch of weird armor. I also like that most Group Ironman don't seem to have committed to overrides, so you can literally, there's so many Gothic staffs or necromancy robes running around Nemi Forest or whatever, and I think that is cool. Like I do like having an identity in my override on the main game. I love rocking my platinum Pernix. It's just fun for me, and I'll never change it off because I feel like that's who I am on World 34 at this point. But it's cool to see people experience the early game, and that kind of flows into my second kind of story is really just in line with having missed this phase of combat in modern EOC. And I know some of these updates are fairly recent, but it's wacky to just like rediscover weird aspects of combat again, or those that are new. Like, did you know you can wear Serenic armor at level 1 range? Like,
no.
Yeah, you can wear Armadale at level 1 range. You can wear Subjugation at level 1 magic. It's only defense requirements now. When did that happen? I have no idea. It's kind of cool, especially in Group Ironman mode, when like, hey, Cliff, your range level's 10. You want to borrow my full Armadale? I have no idea. It's wild, though.
Interesting.
I'm excited to wear Armadale at 40 range. Yeah, that's going to be fun.
But in line with that, also just continuing to like, I'm used to the hyper meta a little bit, right? Like I'm at Raksha and I'm juggling for range EOFs and messing with agility and adrenaline.
So you go all in combat on your main then.
I've just reached the point in the game where I'm like kind of passively going for Golden Reaper, right?
Sure.
So I have about half the logs done and probably about half of what I have left. I'm just missing 1 drop. So I don't think I'll ever get there, candidly. But like I know combat pretty well at this point. Which gives me the perspective of, I've been reading on Reddit for the last year and a half, 2 years, however long we've had necromancy now. necromancy like overtuned, unfair to other combat styles.
Necromancy ruined the game sort of thing, right?
And like, I see some of the argument because it does feel more powerful than the other styles. And like initially I was pretty balanced in getting to tier 70 all in my combats in Group Ironman. But honestly, like, it does feel like the combat styles have their place, and I like that. And I know this is what the community and especially like the upper tier echelon combat kind of shadow council of PvMe is asked for, of like, hey, melee should feel like AoE burst damage or bleeds, and like magic should feel like debuffs and
crits.
Necromancy should be and crits. My gripe is ranged feels awful. And maybe it's just early ranged at least feels awful, which is sad because it's my favorite combat style.
And by early, are we talking less than 50 or lower? Or
I think it's specifically between the 50 and 70 range, although early range is rough too because you don't get an AoE until 55. So like training on anything in bulk is a little weird. But like, if you just pull up the list of range and the weapons that are between the magic shortbow and like a crystal bow, you can get if you do quest, which I have not committed hard to like the rest of our group. But like the entire range from 60 to 70 is very hard for especially like Iron Man to break into. Like the default tier 60 weapon would be Demon Hunter crossbows. I just powered through with a magic shortbow because anything else would have been like
it's not a fun experience when you compare it to necromancy or like Cliff was talking about earlier, magic.
It doesn't feel fun. The abilities aren't fun. It is slow and like feels undertuned, and there's no identity behind range right now. It's not a bleed build. It's not an AoE build. It doesn't give you extra range
until you get to the enchanted bolts way later on.
And even then, to make them really effective, you need Seer's Hard Diary, which requires some skills in like the 90s.
Greater Ricochet as well is always a thing that comes up too.
Yeah, range just feels like a very late game style at the earliest.
That's interesting. That's interesting you mentioned that because, I feel like over the last year and a bit, we've had so much discussion about is necromancy pushing things in the wrong way, and should Sanctum have, made the tier 95 wands as easy to get as they were. But, you look at it at the end of the day, late game, sure, lots of people I know love their Bow of the Last Guardian, and when it comes to crossbows, we don't have the T95 crossbows yet, but overall, late game ranged is very well, spread out and I think thought out. But do you feel like you would be holding a group back if you were, take your range at around 70 or 80 back?
Yeah. If I was a range primary, I don't know. I mean, I guess I would be. The other awkward thing is, like, in an ideal world, you'd be able to fit these, like, awkward gaps with fletching. Like, oh, that's okay, I'll just make an Elder Shortbow. Well, go look at the fletching and woodcutting level. There's no way to cheese that out right now for an Iron Man. So, like, I'd be kind of sunk, and, like, I'd have to probably rely on Cliff to catch me Chinchampas so I can go cheek it in the abyss until I don't know, get up to the level where I can mess around with Ascension creatures, I guess. It's a weird gap right now. And once again, like, what's the payoff? I guess eventually I cheese enough bossing so that I can get Onyx Bolts and at level 85, 90 range can maybe sustain at Kriara as well as I can with level 70 Necromancy.
I feel like that's maybe just a wider combat council thing that, maybe needs to be addressed. And I wonder if anybody has really jumped on this as an issue going up, because maybe it just needs a highlighting all the way from, one to the 80s to kind of lay that out. And, I haven't gone through ranged ever since my main, and I was, well beyond 80 when EOC came out. So I never had the pleasure of experiencing anything like that. So that's definitely something I want to look into more on that. So you guys have any other stories you want to share at all about your Group Ironman adventures thus far?
I did a very early run I started out doing a lot of questing. I thought I might rush the quest gate, but I've gotten distracted by group content. But I did a very early run of the Haunted Mine and then straight into the lair of Tarn Razor Lord.
Salve Amulet.
Sounds great, right? Salve Amulet unlocks combat training for later. I hate that lair. If you do it early and you don't just teleport there with a Slayer Ring, it's just a pain in the ass. And it's like, if you do it twice, like the second time you're like, this is fine, this took 5 minutes. But the first time you do it, there are so many booby traps that are just like not visually obvious that you're just constantly getting your progress. You're getting knocked down by a trap into a separate floor, and you got to it's just slow and tedious, and I hated it. And you also, like, legitimately with the combat rework, you're like taking damage. I went through an inventory of food in my first run, but I finally got there, and I like.
That was a fun thing our group ran up against too, is that you think, oh yeah, necromancy, tank armor, quest bossing is going to be fine, but then you remember that there's some quests and whatnot that had their boss life points toned up, and this actually hurts a little bit.
Yeah.
Whack you.
But then the actual boss of the lair was not Tarn, it was my brain, and I lost to the boss. Because there is a level 30 or 40 Slayer requirement to enter the boss room, which I was like Slayer level 5. And they let you go through the entire maze and take all the damage. And like the door with the boss is you click on the door and it's like, you don't have Slayer level 40. And I have not cursed so much playing RuneScape in many years. I was very upset.
The early quest struggles, and I know that quest actually because I'm in the process again slowly going through quests on old school, and that was actually the most recent one that we did was the Haunted Mine and Tarn Razor. We've done so many other ones, we got like around 20 quests left, but we just left everything Mauritania until the end there. But I do know how cumbersome that lair can be.
Yeah.
So. I also opened up the floor to provide you guys the opportunity to share some tips and tricks. We already talked about the whirligig one in relation to the cosmetics menu, but what are some of the other ones we got here?
Yeah, I have a game changer for you. I was listening to the last episode. You were talking about how the ore box and wood box is so useful until you need to use a deposit box, and how frustrating that is because you can only sort of empty those at a bank. I am here to tell you, my friends, you can use the ore box on a deposit box, and that will empty it
into the metal bank, not the actual bank, right?
Correct. That is a good question. I think it goes to your actual bank.
Okay.
But it does mean you can use the ore box in a location that is close to
right. So then you can just clean it out after as noted items, so not too big of a deal.
Yeah, not too big. But that is still much, much better quality than thinking you have to do an inventory of 28 because you can't use an ore box there.
Nice. Okay. That'll actually help me. I'm in the process right now of mining my Luminite to 70. So
nice.
But
another good shout out on the mining front. On that note, I guess that's where I ended up specializing. I'm sitting at 87 mining after spending my days in the gem rocks. A really good place to get either coal for your auto heater or gold for the crafting grind or porters making necklaces is the concentrated deposits over in the living rock caverns. I had never legitimately spent a bunch of time there mining, but every time you get a gold ore, it gives you 5 at a time. And so you can actually collect, I calculated, you get 1,300 gold ore per hour if you throw on a premier artifact for the 50% porter chance. But you throw on Quarry Master, you throw on your premier artifact porter buff, you get 1,300 gold ore per hour, which is pretty crazy. So that has been a big help for us as well.
And I think the most interesting thing about that is I remember when the living rock caverns came out, and those concentrated rocks down there were actually mining meta for a bit way back in the day.
Yeah.
We had a gold rush for a minute.
Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah.
Legit gold rush.
And I mean, hey, I guess the irons need the gold too for that. Which I mean, that's in my future shortly. Yeah.
And important to note that those monsters are aggressive, but there's a few safe spots. So I know the one I use, you would just run out straight south where you enter. You can get up against the wall and you can't get hit by the baddies.
Okay. Yeah. And then this next one, Thieves already told me about this one, but tell the listeners here about this.
Early dungeoneering tokens. Once you hit level 60 magic and you've got that Gothic staff, you can go to ED4, the Zamorakian Undercity, and go kill Cerberus. The Cerberus Juvenile, which is sort of the first mini-boss there. There is one tile you can stand on at a diagonal angle, and if you surge and start clicking right away, you can run right past the sort of 4 witches that are near the start without aggroing them. There is like one Mender witch you're going to have to fight regardless, but it lets you safe spot Cerberus. And with the Gothic staff, one of the weird things about the Cerberus Juvenile, its stats don't regenerate like almost all bosses. So when you lower its defense with the Gothic staff, that continuously stacks on and on and on. And there's some eventual cap, but it is very high. So like I know when I first started doing, I think I started at like 45% accuracy, and I would Gothic staff it on repeat until it got like 75% accuracy. And so doing that with a Gothic staff, even at that early level, you can get your kills down to like maybe 5 or 6 minutes. I'll tell you, at magic level 76, I was doing a whole bunch of these, and it was 3.5 minute kills end to end. Not just the kill time, the actual full run, banking and everything. And I've left the best part for last. Every one of those kills, every 3.5 minutes, drops 5,000 dungeoneering tokens, which is absolutely massive early on.
And that's how I'm going to be training dungeoneering when it comes to it, because I have never liked Daemonheim. I'll do it in a group because it's good company, but overall, yikes.
And I'll do you one even better. Get a Slayer Task of Hellhounds.
Oh, yeah.
Every single kill is 10,000 Slayer experience.
Tennis?
So that's like completing a Reaper task every 3 minutes.
I was excited until I heard you got a surge and 2-step and do-si-do. I was like, shit, I'm out of this. But
it's not bad. I kept dying or screwing it up for the team as we tried to do it in groups initially. But there is just one specific tile that after you figure it out is pretty easy to identify. And you could just count the spaces away from kind of the major milestones. If you're just angled right and send it, you can get there. So takes a little practice, but I don't think it's too bad. We were worried that we need to unlock like dive and everything to like major tick perfect strat it, but it's actually, I think, fairly navigable.
And 10,000 Slayer XP per kill on a Hellhound or Demon task.
That's huge.
I am halfway through a task of, I think it was 150. No, it might have been 183 of them or something crazy like that. So that's what 1.8 million Slayer experience. That's just gonna catapult me up to the 80s. It's a little broken, honestly, but we're enjoying skipping having to use salt on rock slugs.
Yeah, and a lot of the other annoying early Slayer creatures too in that regard. Then,
yeah.
And just for example, I get through about 35 in an hour and a half. I think I spread this out over maybe 2.5 or 3 hours, my Slayer task. And in that time, that's 350,000 Slayer XP. And I dropped I bought a few things with the tokens and then dropped the tokens on experience and got, 120,000 dungeoneering XP. So combined in the early, late game, that's not going to match what you can get with other methods. But in that really early game, just with 60 magic, pretty insane. Particularly, the one thing I highly recommend, get that early bone necklace and get a bone crusher. You can do that in an hour with that method. And that unlocks AFK training in some places. Or even better, it just, in most places, anybody that drops bones, it means you can just start training with your offensive prayers on all the time because it'll keep your prayer up.
And now I see earlier why you were talking about earth spells in particular here. Cerberus is weak to earth spells.
Absolutely huge. It's like a 15% increase in accuracy. I don't mean a 15% increase to the number. I mean it's like plus 15.
Yeah, which is, in modern game 15% extra damage. So
yeah.
What else do we got?
I got a couple quick ones. Number one, along the journey of like necromancy armor, I guess I kind of realized not going through necromancy with Max of like, oh, necromancy is actually like the progression feels good and is cool, but it's not easy. It's like, oh yeah, I can get to early tier 80 weapons. Oh, wait a minute. That means I need 70 strength and 70 range and 70 agility to be able to do the task required for it to kill each God Ward 1 monster. So not the easiest, but I had already reached about level 100 combat and was like, okay, I need to get to Sarah God Wars, so I got to do the 70 agility grind, and I don't really want to spend my jack of all trades stuff on it because it's better for herb lore, so I'm going to do courses. And the clear course to do after level 52 or 3 is Wilderness, and what PK base that exists in RS3 was keenly aware that there would be Ironman with the Abyssal Skull, which increases your agility experience by a decent tick. So I probably got PK'd in RS3, each for about 550k, about 5 or 6 times on the course to get to 70 agility. So if anybody is starting their Ironman fresh or hasn't really gotten to combat yet, my recommendation is do
some
70
early
agility before
right?
you hit 50 combat. Yeah. Otherwise, the 115s and ECBs come out from behind the pipe and gun you down in 2 shots. My other one is, I don't know if this is super intentional. I hope so, because I don't want to be accused of abusing bug. But we did originally, once again, kind of along the lines of necromancy armor progression. It's like, okay, well, I also need the crafting and smithing levels to be able to create the gear. It is assistable. You can get assist from your fellow Group Ironman, and of course, by nature of us having rushed someone with invention, we have somebody with 80 crafting and smithing early. So that was kind of another part of our strategy.
I feel like that's intended.
But
yeah, I think so.
At least specifically, the weapons are grayed or blacked out when you are receiving assistance, and you can just click through it and it will still make it. So that might just be an interface glitch on the weapons. I didn't test it with the armor because I've always had the crafting to be able to make the armor. But just for those who might mirror our style of rush invention, therefore you have someone who can make you a bunch of nice necro armor without having to worry about it yourself, you can get assistance from your fellow Group Ironman member to be able to progress in tiers.
Yeah, that's a little bit worrying about how you say it's gray there, but it's not game breaking, so I'll let that one slide here. What else have we got?
I've just got 2 quick hits. The first is a light source. Best light source I can recommend: Bullseye Lantern. The questing dog. I'm gonna butcher the name if I try. That you get from Ace Quest Caravan. The Lorehound. That's the safe version. It can provide you with quest items. So if you talk to the dog, you can ask it for a Bullseye Lantern, and it is already lit. So if you rush quests early, like many are doing in Iron Man, that is a wonderful light source, and you don't need the 49 fire making. And Tanis, I'm sorry that tip comes a week late.
You do need the tier 2 or 3 dog, though. So you need like 100 quest points or 125 or something.
I think it's 100 quest points for that.
Okay.
Other quick tip is construction. The obvious play we've all experienced by now is Fort 4 and 3.
Yep.
Wonderful for those early levels. But if you do the first few fort quests, you're sort of building up the guardhouse, the kitchen, those types of things. You end up sort of in the early, maybe mid 60s for construction, just kind of naturally.
Yeah, I think we have somebody in our group that did that, and that sounds about right. 63-ish, give or take.
Yeah. So there's my big tip. At level 63 is the first time you can build a prom broker. And that massively can improve your quality of life for fishing grinds. So like when I hit 63 construction, I went and built a prawn broker. I already had 2 prawn points from whatever random fishing I had done. I forget the mechanics of how you earn them. But from that moment forward, at 63 construction, I have baitless fishing. So that's a huge sort of quality of life improvement at Menafos, where I always accidentally click deposit all and then deposit my fishing bait and have to go bank. But yeah, that's another nice one, is build that prawn broker nice and early.
Nice.
Nice.
What's this about bandits and god armor?
Yeah, just for anyone who doesn't know, really good early training. So I think one of the challenges with early training is it's hard to AFK. Unless maybe you're doing necromancy. So if you want to cut down on food, one of the best ways to do that is go to a place where everyone's aggressive. So people know the Abyss for this. But another really good shout out is bandits at the bandit camp, Western Desert.
Right.
And if you go into that bar, you wear an item that is Zamorakian or Ceradome.
So an unholy symbol or a holy symbol then.
Yep, that'll work. They are auto-aggressive perpetually, and they are pretty low level and pretty decent experience. So with a vampirism aura, probably starting in like the 40s.
Lower. I would say 30,
lower?
unless you're using range.
Sure. So maybe in the 30s for like melee magic necromancy. You throw on a vampirism aura, and that's enough to sustain and fully AFK. And I know, like at current levels, I'm getting about 180,000 experience an hour. At lower levels, you'll probably get at least 100,000.
Good tip. Like it. Like it.
You know, that's how Tannis sounds when he has his mind blown about that. And that's just another thing, too, that our group in particular has really been utilizing and jumping in on, was just having the top tier of all the auras unlocked has really been a game changer.
Nice.
Well, I dug up a very old tip, something that I used to do, but I've never played Ironman before, so it kind of clicked this week. I was like, wait a minute. So I've been working on the kingdom and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, wait a minute, once I unlock it, how am I gonna, I don't have the kind of money where I used to keep it up before. Like,
right.
Damn, I really am gonna be slumlording it. Like, shit. And then I remembered, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure after Royal Trouble, you can flat pack and it goes to your balance, your deposit.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh,
so
that's
the only
an old mechanic.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. But
where does it go, Tannis?
It goes into it deposits it into your coffer.
Oh.
Yeah.
You could just use flat packs as your currency to upkeep
Exactly.
your kingdom. That's genius.
Exactly. The hardest thing is getting back and forth there, but I mean,
well, we have Rings of Wealth for that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a good tip. Had not thought of that.
See, I got 200 mil construction before proteins, before workbenches, so I used the house workbench and made flat packs in like 2011 or 12.
Oh dear God, how was your wrist?
Yep, me too.
And I wonder if that mechanic existed, because I probably just dropped those flat packs. I wonder how much in Kingdom Gold I missed out on. But
that is amazing. That is amazing. And I've enjoyed this discussion here. I think it's interesting how you guys started, not intending to, push, but here you are, sitting at rank 44 presently on this, a good spread of levels amongst your group of Naabes here. Is there anything else any of you would like to bring up story-wise about your group? Anything before we start wrapping the show up this week?
Well, I know you all love quests in the lore community, so another nod to Thieves for the idea of the group name, the Naabe, or Naabe, or Naab, I'm not sure. That's the word, the Garaho word for friend or friendship. And so we thought that was fitting for Group Ironman. We picked usernames around that, and we'll eventually be unlocking the title, the Naabe.
I remember that. I remember the memes all around that when people would see the guy in sinkholes immediately say that whenever they would go there. So the reference was immediately fresh in my head for that. So
yeah. No, but it's been a blast. I'm so glad Jagex did this. I hope this plus Fresh Start Worlds just shows the interest and hopefully for them profitability of putting on these things, and that like this can make a foundation, a case for leagues in the future. That's my sincere hope. I love these.
There's always worry about like, oh, am I over fracturing an already fractured MMO? But I think
they could do
between
worse.
This and also like old school has clearly shown that if it's made with strong design intents, and it's engaging, people are willing to pay the additional membership cost. They're willing to put their mains down and commit to something new and cool for a short amount of time or a long time. And I think like maybe with my quick soapbox, my last pitch to Jagex would be, it's kind of fun being competitive from a high scores total level perspective. I would love to see Jagex fuel a little bit of the competitive fire. And like one thing that I really wish like this game mode had, and I hope that future game modes had, is something along the lines of like a collection log and a collection log ranking system. Like Group Ironman doesn't even have like an achievement or for rune score like real capability to track competition. But like if I could not only like get a subjugation ward drop that I'm excited about because Mander then has to level it up using invention, bless his soul. But like if I'd also get like, hey, you got points because you unlocked, one of 40,000 collective blog slots that exist in the game. Like that would be a fun alternative way to be competitive and give
rather
people
than just the high score numbers.
Yeah, and give people different options for goals they want to pursue. Some people want that first to do Reaper. Some people want the first to do all the quests. Like I feel that's another fun, cool option of like we could be the first Group Ironman group with Ultimate Slayer or with half of our completion log completed, and that this just gives people more motivation to lean into these game modes and play it in a different kind of way that is befitting of the full MMO experience.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I could see that happening, and I think that there's also the push to get a hardcore mode in, but I don't think they hit the deadline for that, so that's not there on launch. But I feel like all these extra little things on the side are things that could be put in later, and presumably they'd have the telemetry to track who would have that first with the log. So it's an interesting idea, nonetheless, I'll say. But
or even just like I said, like a score system, right? Like maybe I'm just racing to get the most God Wars once drops, right? Or maybe depending on the tier of armor drop you receive, that's worth X amount of points. So that's everything over 50 is you're getting 5 points for a tier 5 drop, 8 points for a tier 8 drop, and that becomes some kind of scoring system to show how successful you are in PVM or completing mini games as a Group Ironman or something like that. I don't know. It would be even just like boss kill high scores would be neat. I know Jagex has struggled for years to get the rowdy high score system to work the best, but I just love stuff like that, and I think it encourages people to play the game in different ways.
Right on. We do have some achievements this week as well. The double XP storm is here. So starting off on the 20th of November, we have Dad Engineer with 200 million Fletching XP, Edict of Chaos with 200 million Constitution, 120 Crafting, 120 Strength, and 120 Attack. Godin got 120 Summoning. Samurai Jack got 120 Ranged. Tim 2 got 120 Mining. Edict of Chaos is back again with 120 Fletching and Woodcutting just before the update comes in December. And we have the world-famous Clan Quest member, Quest Archet, with 120 Crafting and 120 Fletching on the 19th. Sparty Pants with 200 million Fishing, and Woody with 120 Firemaking.
Nice. Look at all these 120s. Jeez. All right. Arcane got 120 Prayer on the 18th. Duke Juker with 120 Runecrafting. Then we have Edict with 120 Invention and 99 Defense. We have Woody with 120 fishing. We have Exlonia with 99 mining. Adani with 120 fishing on the 17th. And Avocadoned with 120 necromancy.
And on the 16th, we had Adani with 120 fire making, Dark Wizard with 99 woodcutting and 99 necromancy, Edict of Chaos, busy week at 120 ranged, Edict again with 99 constitution, 99 attack, and 99 strength. And on the 15th, we had Dark Wizard with 99 smithing, 99 dungeoneering.
We've got a couple familiar faces for the next few. So we've got a Dark Wizard also knocking out crafting and invention at 99 on November 15th. Edict of Chaos also completed 120 mining, something that we're, as we discussed, well attuned with recently. So congratulations to that. We've got Edict on the 15th knocking out 4 99s, 99 thieving, 99 range, 99 fletching, and 99 cooking. He's been all over the place. We got Godden doing 200 million agility. I hope it wasn't all at the Wilderness Agility course on November 15th, so congratulations, Godden. We've got Raven Rain getting 120 necromancy on November 15th as well, and Atreus getting 99 strength on the 14th, so congratulations to you all.
Nice work.
Nicely done, everyone. We love the double XP storm of achievements. It's always good to have lots of people on the show to help read these out with. So we're gonna end the show with pick of the week, and you know we're famous here for having a bit odd picks of the week. So Cliff, what do you got for us here?
Yes, interesting pick of the week. My father recently gave me a gift. I always listen to music or podcasts in the shower. In fact, this very show I am sure I will probably be listening to in the shower as part of my morning routine. And I've always used sort of like a random Bluetooth speaker, hang it from the wall or something in the shower. My pick of the week is actually a product from Moxie and Kohler. So Kohler makes a shower head that has a built-in Bluetooth speaker. So the outside of that shower head is where the water flows. The inside of the shower head is a speaker that is removable. So it's magnetic. It stays in there. It's all waterproof. You can pull that speaker out for charging, or you can just use it as a standalone speaker if you want to do that. And the acoustics are designed for sort of the echoey shower space, so you can sort of turn it to shower mode or not. It also has built-in sort of Alexa functionality, so you can ask the weather, you can ask to play something, etc. So just a nice little device, something I wasn't seeking, I didn't know I would like it, and all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, this is kind of the exact thing I would have designed if I was starting from scratch. Of like, what would I like my shower listening experience to be? So that's the Moxie shower head from Kohler.
That's just so interesting because we do the update survey every winter, right, in like February or March, what have you, and I don't think we've ever asked or had something back on the survey. Where do you listen to the podcast? Because we always get the usual, while playing the game, while at the gym, going to work, while at work, that sort of thing. But nobody has ever put down in the shower. But lo and behold, now we know that's an option here. So
there you go. There's no voices I'd rather be naked with. Thank you for what you do.
Oh, that's got to make it to the clip show this year, and maybe even a quote here. Wow. Okay. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of this episode. If you do want this pick of the week, that can be found in the show notes over at update.show, as well as everything else that's there. And I will just say as well that if you want the podcast delivered each and every week, the best way to do that is to subscribe. We're on all the podcast listening services out there: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Amazon as well, and YouTube at youtube.com/RSBANDB. But the easiest way, just go to update.show/subscribe and click on your favorite podcast listening service, and you can go there and subscribe and get this show delivered to you each.
Well, the true easiest way is to ask your shower head, though.
Yeah, or that. I mean, if it's on Amazon, so I did have somebody test their Amazon device, you can literally say, listen to RSBANB, and it will bring that up. So I guess you can ask your showerhead now for that.
Yeah, can confirm it works.
So, but thanks again, Cliff and Knight, for being here. Anything you guys would like to say before we depart about your group in general, RS?
I just want to say thank you for having us. It was, my wife thanks you as well. She doesn't have to listen to me talk about Group Ironman for one evening. And I wanted to thank the listeners and you all for putting on the show every week. I've been enjoying it for years. I know it takes a lot of work behind the scenes. It's some of my favorite listening content of the week, so please keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. And of course, thank you for being here and just sharing the insights of a different Group Ironman group, because we've been doing it our own way and the listeners have been hearing that for a while, so it's just interesting to hear a fresh and new perspective on that. So thank you to the both of you for being there. And I do have a link in the show notes to their high score page, the Naabe, on the competitive group high score, so you can track where they sit and just have a browse to the top 100 of some of the names that are there. So, but in any case, Tannis and I will be back next week for another episode of RSBANB Update. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we'll see you guys next week for another episode of RSBANB Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya.